Let's make the perfect sphere grid. There's a tool online for scrambling the sphere grid in Final Fantasy X, which can create a lot of fun shenanigans, like a spellcaster Auron with pathetically low magic, or a warrior Lulu with the world's strongest Moogle doll. With such a tool at our disposal, what do you think a perfect layout for speedrunning would look like? One that gets speedrunners through the game as quickly as possible. Perhaps you're thinking we would just pick 3 people and shove the grids full of strength and magic nodes. After all, when the sky's the limit, what could possibly be better than making everyone hitting the damage cap? If that's what you think, then sorry to break it to you, but you're wrong. Speedrunning Final Fantasy X has a lot more nuance than simply shoving 3 people full of stats and calling it a day. There's powerful attacks that don't depend on stats, plus speedrunners are limited on power, speed, and mana spheres. Not to mention the randomizer doesn't just pull stats out of thin air. We are in fact limited by factors such as the number of each stat on the grid, the position of skills, and so on. So how are we going to make our perfect sphere grid? Let's start off simple and take a look at the characters with smaller changes before we tackle on the toughest parts of the grid, starting with Lulu. Lulu is pretty useless in the speedrun. She has 2 roles. One is to defeat the robots at Luca as well as charging up the crane at Obliterator. And 2 is to go deep into Riku's sphere grid so that Yuna can warp to her and take all the strength and agility nodes there. Since we're freely moving stat nodes around, we can safely get rid of her second role. Lulu deserves much better than simply defeating a bunch of robots though. So let's start by replacing one of her spells with Holy. Now Lulu can defeat both the Sinfin and Sinspawn Jino with 1 Holy cast each, which by extension means we no longer need to summon Valifer. We're not stopping there though. Let's also give her double cast and Thandaga. Lulu already one-shots the robots with Thunder, but she needs 2 turns to defeat 2 robots. So let's just have her use double cast with Thunder to defeat 2 robots in 1 turn. I originally wanted to give Lulu some additional agility as well, but she needs 5 points of agility to outspeed the robots, which is 2 extra speed spheres. But speed spheres are a precious resource in the speedrun. My other characters combined need 15 speed spheres, which is close to the 17 we need in an any percent speed run. And I've definitely had runs that needed to waste time getting additional speed spheres. So I think I'll leave an agility +2 and agility +3 for Lulu as the 3rd and 4th stat nodes so that there's the option, but give Tidus an MP +40 node and have him haste Lulu at the start of every fight. Now we can breeze through these fights much more quickly. In the next section, we have Obliterator. Lulu double casting Thandaga does a disgusting amount of damage, but not enough to defeat Obliterator on her own. So let's add 2 magic +4 nodes. Now she's very close to defeating Obliterator on her own. So with just 1 extra attack from Tidus, we can defeat it at the start in just 2 turns. No need to charge up the crane. That's about as far as Lulu's gonna go, but she's already saving us quite a bit of time over a regular any percent run. She definitely got one of the biggest upgrades. Next we have Wakka. Wakka normally takes a back seat in a few fights while Tidus does most of the heavy lifting. But with our perfect sphere grid, we're kicking him out of the back seat and shoving him into the trunk. He's forced into a few fights like Sinspawn Kills, the Sahagins and Garuda at Luca, and the Extractor. He's also forced into the Every Altana fight, but I mean, that boss dies to 2 Phoenix Downs, so it's completely irrelevant. Wakka doesn't need to attack at all in the Sinspawn Kills fight, as Tidus will have much higher stats than usual, making Wakka's damage irrelevant. It's the same with Extractor. Wakka's damage is so bad that he's better off not attacking. However, there is one role we can give to him. But first, we need to talk about the Stunning Steel. Normally in Luca, runners buy a weapon called the Stunning Steel from Wakka, which comes with Slow Touch. This sword is only used for the Extractor fight in order to inflict slow on the boss, which has a 50% chance of landing. But why waste the time and money buying such an unreliable weapon? Let's delegate that role to Wakka instead. By replacing Wakka's blind attack with slow and giving him an MP +40, we can have Wakka cast slow on the boss instead of relying on Tidus to get it himself. This gives Tidus enough time to defeat Extractor before it even floats up. That's all he's going to do. He casts slow 1 time and now he's useless for the rest of the run. But hey, he saved us 3050 gil. That's more than he's ever made in his entire Blitzball career. Next up on our list is Auron. Despite being the legendary guardian known throughout Spira, Auron's not so great at guarding the party in the run. It takes too long to grab his offensive skills, so why don't we fix that by giving him Sentinel? At Everay, the boss gets a total of 2 attacks before Tidus demolishes it. But the thing is, we need to survive these 2 hits. Normally the strategy is to get Tidus cheer and 1000 extra HP in order to survive. And if he gets hit the first time, Kimahri needs to throw an X potion or elixir on him. But all of that costs time. We can instead just have Auron use Sentinel to protect the party. Auron can only take 2 hits before he dies, but that's all he needs to do. This saves time from not grabbing cheer or the 1000 HP on Tidus, though runners may still want the HP anyways to make the Dunner plane safer, as it has the scariest ambushes in the run. Rikku is one of the most important members of the speedrun, as she starts with Steal, Use, and Mix. During the run, Rikku needs an Agility +3 node, which is located 2 spaces below her. I can't be bothered to go that far, so let's just move it up 1 space. There we go. Now Rikku can stay where she is and never move on the sphere grid for the entire run. Rikku also has a surprisingly high MP pool, so we should capitalize on that. Let's replace her Use skill with Blizzaga and see what that does. Normally in the beginning, Rikku needs to steal 5 grenades and throw them all at Tros. We still want to steal the 5 grenades, but we'll save them for some other time. With Blizzaga, Rikku can now defeat Click in just 2 to 3 Blizzaga casts, and Tros in 4. That's already much faster than the old strategies. And just to make it go by faster, let's replace Tidus' cheer at the start of his grid with haste so that he can help Rikku defeat Tros faster. That's pretty much all we need to do with Rikku. If you're familiar with the speedrun, you may be wondering what we're going to do about the later boss fights now that Rikku no longer has Use. Namely the crawler fight, where we have to throw 2 lightning marbles at the boss to fill up Rikku's overdrive. Here's the best part, Rikku still has the Use skill. With the way this specific randomizer works, every character still has their original default skills. It's just that whatever replaces them in the sphere grid is now an extra skill learned. I assume it's there as some sort of soft lock prevention so that in the absolute worst case scenario, you can follow no sphere grid strategies if you get a completely unusable sphere grid. It may seem like cheating, but I already said I'm looking for a perfect sphere grid with this specific randomizer tool, so it's fair game. Now let's talk about Kimahri. Kimahri's in a bit of an unfortunate position because he's actually pretty helpful in the speedrun due to getting access to Steal and Use from Rikku's grid at such a good time. But with Tidus learning Use as well, he's a little less useful now. Since Use is in Tidus' grid, he'll learn it by unlocking the level 1 lock to Tidus' grid, but he'll only use it for Biron and Yankee. It might be worth replacing Lancet with Steal so that he can still steal in places like Bikanel Desert, since Tidus misses often with Mug. Otherwise, his Stone Breath Overdrive is still disgustingly fast for a few fights, such as getting rid of the Guado Guardians at Seymour and to take out 2 waves of enemies at home. Besides Steal and Use, the only other thing Kimahri grabs in the speedrun is an Agility +4 so that his Lancet into Stone Breath combo at home still works without giving the enemies a turn. So we'll just put an Agility +4 node behind where Lancet was and call it a day. And finally, we have our 2 stars of the show, Tidus and Yuna. In the Final Fantasy X speedrun, Tidus and Yuna are the main attackers, which is why they get the vast majority of sphere grid development compared to the paltry few nodes everyone else collects. But why these 2 specifically? To answer that, let's take a look at the any % run. Tidus is used a lot in the early to mid game. He's fast, he gets good skills like Flee and Haste, and he also gets access to Auron's grid later on to access the many powerful strength nodes with very few levels. Sounds great, those stats will surely come in handy for the late game. There's just one problem, and it's that he's limited to 9,999 damage in the run. That's all fine and dandy for a while since everyone's fairly limited in damage, but after reaching the Calmlands, 9,999 is considered low. It's very quick and easy to hit tens of thousands of damage in one turn, such as having Rikku mixing trio of 9,999 and having the party throw fire gems to deal 50,000 damage each turn. So Tidus becomes obsolete very quickly. So what becomes his replacement? That's where Yuna comes in. Most of the Aeons that Yuna summons are subject to the same 9999 damage restriction, but there's one Aeon in the speedrun that's special, and that's Bahamut. Unlike everyone else, Bahamut naturally breaks the 9999 damage limit and can hit up to 99,999 damage with each attack, making him the prime candidate for speedrunners in the late game. We'll get Tidus into a good position to defeat the early game bosses fast, and then switch over to boosting up Yuna and Bahamut. Since we now have access to every stat node on the board, we can have some fun pumping up their stats as high as possible. The only issue though is that there are only so many strength plus 4 nodes on the board. In total, I counted 23 strength plus 4 nodes on the grid, so we'll need to figure out a good way to split these up between Tidus and Yuna. If we can have Tidus hit around 9,000 damage on the later bosses, then we can save quite a bit of time from faster fights. On the other hand, we need to make sure Yuna hits certain thresholds for the late game. Otherwise, she won't hit hard enough to guarantee the kills without wasting more time. For Tidus, we ideally want to defeat Anima in 2 hits and Everay in 4 hits. To do this, we need at least 65 strength, which takes 13 strength nodes. We'll also need to give him 12 points of agility for the boss strategies to work out. Otherwise, he doesn't attack fast enough. I really wanted to cut this down to 8, but the 9th point of agility is what lets him outspeed the monks before Seymour's wedding. Yuna, on the other hand, is much more complicated because of the way Aeon stats scale. Yuna's Aeon stats scale based on 2 factors, Yuna's corresponding stat as well as Yuna's total stat count. But with HP divided by 100 rounded down, MP divided by 10 rounded down, and ignoring luck. These numbers also scale differently depending on the Aeon. In the case of Bahamut, every point of Yuna's strength is equal to 1.6 strength on Bahamut, and every 7 total stat points on Yuna is equal to 1 strength. We also need to worry about Bahamut's HP and agility as well as Ixion's strength, but I won't bog you down with all the numbers. We need to hit certain important thresholds throughout the run to minimize the time needed, and unlike in an actual any percent run, we don't need to grab useless stats like MP or magic as filler to hit these thresholds. To find the bare minimum gets really complicated because of how the stats scale based off of Yuna's total. So I had to put these formulas into a spreadsheet to calculate Bahamut's stats. The thresholds Yuna needs to hit for our perfect speedrun are 62 strength on Ixion before Isaru, 35 agility on Bahamut before Spectral Keeper, 148 strength on Bahamut before Seymour Flux, and 2165 HP on Bahamut before Broska's final Aeon. Getting 62 strength on Ixion lets us defeat Isaru's Bahamut in just 3 attacks instead of the usual 4, even with the worst damage rolls possible. And 148 strength on Bahamut lets us one-shot Seymour Flux on Mount Gagazet, which is only doable in the any percent speedrun if you get 4 Friend Spheres from Biron and Yankee, which is a 1 in 64 drop. 35 agility is needed before Spectral Keeper so that Bahamut only gets attacked once instead of twice, which negates the HP and defense requirements for this fight. However, we still need to survive 1 hit from Broska's final Aeon. And based on what Keraphine and Evelyn's damage calculator spat out, the highest damage roll with our squishier Bahamut is 2164, assuming I put the correct numbers in. To get all these stats high enough, we need 1 HP plus 200 node, 18 strength plus 4 node, and 10 agility plus 4 nodes. This is where we run into an issue. Like I said earlier, I counted only 23 strength plus 4 nodes, but between Tidus and Yuna, we need a total of 31 strength plus 4 nodes. So how are we going to divide 23 strength nodes between them? Simple, we'll use teleport spheres. Teleport spheres let you teleport to any node that an ally has unlocked. Speedrunners already grabbed 2 teleport spheres from a chest in Bikanel Desert by just having Auron yeet the standard goer back to the far plane. So we'll just follow the speedrun strategy and use them to warp around the sphere grid. By collecting 9 strength nodes and 2 agility nodes in Via Purifico, we can hit Ixion's stat thresholds before Isaru. Afterwards, Tidus rejoins the party so we can finally warp to Tidus and start making our way towards him, grabbing all of the stats he got and more. There's still one more issue we'll have to deal with, but before we can talk about it, we need to see how we're changing Tidus' grid. Tidus' grid is where we'll see the biggest boss changes. The speedrun manages to make a disgustingly overpowered Bahamut for the late game thanks to all the warping around with friend spheres, teleport spheres, and return spheres, but the early game is far more limiting. We're just going to completely break all semblance of balance with Tidus' perfect grid. I already mentioned swapping out Cheer for Haste earlier on with Riku's section, so we have that. Afterwards, we can get 4 to 8 strength before Kimahri depending on RNG. And this makes Kimahri go from a 6 to 7 hit down to a 2 to 4 hit fight, while since Banyu Kills ends in 3 attacks plus 1 spiral cut. Bailuka will grab Use, which has replaced Flee. Whoa, Use replaced Flee? How does that make any sense? Flee's the most important skill in the run. Why wouldn't I want to grab it ASAP? Actually, there's another setting in the randomizer which makes Tidus start out with Flee, just like how everyone else starts with their base skills. And let's be real, no one in their right mind should be speedrunning without Flee, so that option is naturally on. We'll instead give Flee to Yuna so that both Tidus and Yuna have it, which also makes ambushes slightly safer as Auron and Wakka can just swap to Yuna to Flee, in case Tidus dies. As for use on Tidus, the main reason why I wanted to put this onto Tidus' grid so early is so that he can toss grenades at the Sahagin Chiefs in the Blitzball Stadium. This one-shots an entire round of Sahagins at once, which is way faster than killing them one by one with a hasted Tidus. Tidus also gets access to Agility plus 4 and 4 more Strength plus 4 nodes, which lets him 2-shot the Garuda and 3-shot the Extractor. After Extractor though, we'll have to start considering survivability. While it's faster to finish a speedrun with our perfect sphere grid without giving Tidus a single point in HP, the Thunder Plains has some of the worst ambushes in the game, so I'll include 4 HP nodes right after to give speedrunners some peace of mind. Afterwards, we can continue down Tidus' path and add 6 Strength plus 4 nodes and 2 Agility plus 4 nodes, so that Tidus can hit all his thresholds before Seymour. Tidus also crosses 3 other ability nodes along the way, so let's give him Armor Break, which he normally needs in the run anyways, Entrust, and Mug. Entrust is to fill Riku's overdrive during the Seymour fight, as my current strategy defeats Seymour without giving him a turn to use Blazara and by extension Multi-Dendara, which is how runners normally raise Riku's overdrive. Mug is to cut out steals from boss fights, but with both of these we'll need an MP plus 40 node along the way. The idea looks solid for Tidus' grid. We can just slap down all the nodes and finish off with a few extra agility nodes at the end, but I like to optimize this a bit further. In total, Yuna has 44 sphere grid levels to work with before Seymour Natus, who comes after Tidus rejoins in Bavel. I would like to find some way to collect all the necessary stats for Yuna using only these 44 levels, so that the only reason to open the sphere grid again will be for the Luck plus 4 node before Yunalesca. Before Isaru, we'll need at least 9 strength nodes and 2 agility nodes, and after Isaru, we'll need to collect 9 strength nodes, 8 agility nodes, and 1 HP node. Tidus' grid has too many strength nodes now, so it just gets in the way of Yuna reaching the agility nodes at the end. We can alleviate this by going down Auron's locked path similar to the speedrun, as we get 16 nodes in 15 levels. But doing so requires unlocking 2 level 2 locks. Are there any other layouts that would be more efficient than having to unlock these locks? Actually, turns out there are. Here's one solution I came up with. Instead of having Tidus' final strength nodes continue down his path, I moved them off to the dead end instead. I originally wanted 4 HP nodes on Tidus' grid to make the Thunder Plains safer, but I had to compromise and make it 2 nodes and replace the other with 2 agility nodes. I could make the grid faster by making it 1 HP node and 3 agility nodes, which cuts down on Yuna's AP requirements. But I think runners would appreciate the HP for Thunder Plains more than a few more seconds saved from the sphere grid. Now Yuna can simply go down her own path, which nets her 11 stats in 20 levels, which is the worst path in terms of AP efficiency, but one that requires 1 less teleport and 2 less locks than following Auron's path. I also replaced Prey with Spare Change because Yuna needs that for the final battle against her Aeons. This gets us 9 strength nodes and 2 agility nodes for Isaru. Plus it cuts out all AP requirements for Auron, which is a nice bonus, and all the menuing can be done together with Rikku, Tidus, and Kimahri after Sphere Morph. Since Tidus' main path has 10 strength nodes, I can also skip 1 strength node and warp to Tidus' used node and follow Tidus' path from there, collecting 9 strength nodes, 8 agility nodes, and 1 HP node. Now all we need is one last luck plus 4 node right after Yuna's final agility node to cut out the 3% chance of missing against Yuna and Seymour Omnis. That seems to be good for our perfect sphere grid. Routing is a very complicated process and speedrun strategies change all the time, so there's bound to be more micro optimizations I could add. But I think this shaped up to be a really good sphere grid for speedrunning.